Hi, I'm Tyler, and this is the Fox Valley Film Critics. In this episode, we're going to be discussing the ninth in the lineup of the AFI's Top 100 movie list, Vertigo, as well as the most recent Fast and the Furious movie, Fate of the Furious. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome to the show, brought to you by Groupthink Productions and FVTV. Joining us once again is the wonderful and enigmatic Steve, who's come on to discuss his opinions with these two movies.
Yes, I am. Movies that I don't really remember because it's been
2 weeks about.
Yeah, scheduling conflicts, all that stuff. So
Yeah, it's fine. But I think there's still an interesting conversation to be had. With everyone we bring on this show, I always try to bring on someone who has a unique perspective on things, and your perspective is very unique when it comes to these kinds of movies. So
yes, I fall asleep through them.
Well, Vertigo's still great, and that's our first one. So
okay.
I guess Alfred Hitchcock's generally considered his full masterpiece. Like, he's done probably 5 or 6 films you could count as his masterpiece. But
yeah, I'd say North by Northwest. I really like that one. He
Psycho,
did do that one, right?
Yeah, Psycho, Birds.
I love Psycho. Yes, Birds. Was it Strangers on a
Train?
I gotta check that one out still.
Yeah. But yeah, we watched Vertigo 2 weeks ago. I just rewatched it again the other night, just so I could kind of get a fresh perspective on it. And I find that it was the kind of film that, because I'm a millennial and because I have a short attention span, it's the kind of film that really gets better the more times you kind of give it chances and the more times you watch it, because you start kind of realizing what it's about. And there's a lot of really interesting kind of film theory and discussion about what the film's about. And for the sake of kind of explaining the film and what it's about, I'll say basic summary of the story. Guy is a private detective, and I believe in the 1960s in San Francisco, and he's hired by his former boss to track down the boss's wife, who...
What's the lead actor's name again?
Jimmy Stewart?
Yeah, that guy.
Yes, awesome. Jimmy Stewart's the lead, and he's tracking down his former boss's wife, who is acting very strangely. She's going off on long trips when she says she's staying at home. She's doing all these really kind of bizarre, like, she's going to museums and hanging out all day. She acts different around him, and it's like this kind of, I don't know how to describe it exactly. He needs to try to figure out what's going on with her. And he starts tailing her as a private detective, and he ends up basically falling in love with her. And I don't want to really say much more about the plot other than that, because what happens to the movie is really it's really fascinating, especially in the context of Alfred Hitchcock's filmography. Because one of the things I've heard people describe about the film is that it's him essentially self-criticizing his tendencies as a filmmaker. And again, I don't want to spoil the big plot twist of the movie, because that's half the reason you should watch Vertigo if you haven't.
The Vertigo zoom.
That too. There's some really good pioneering film techniques in this that kind of express the main character's uneasiness because he suffers from vertigo as a result of an accident involving another police officer where he unintentionally let him fall off a roof.
Yeah, I was messing around the other day with my camera, and I was trying to do that vertigo zoom, where you have it zoomed in all the way, and then you walk backwards and zoom in, and I was getting some cool shots that way. I was doing it down the hallway and stuff, and then when I was at a recording studio a couple weeks ago, I brought the camera, and I was like filming stuff, and I was doing it there, and it was just really fun to do. It was just like, I watched this movie recently, and I was just like, oh, let me try this out, and yeah, that's really cool. And then there's that one really bizarre scene where it's all psychedelic Technicolor, where he was having a dream or tripping
It makes more sense when you in the context of what the film is saying, because it goes into what happens in the second half of the film.
Right.
But it basically has to do with, it's a very little representation of his anxiety with the vertigo and a reflection of kind of what happened in the plot. That's the big twist.
Yeah.
But as I was saying, what kind of the things that makes it interesting is that it's a kind of an honest look from Alfred Hitchcock's perspective on how he kind of treats female actors or actresses on set. And I'm not the first person to say that, because there's been a lot of film theory about that. But basically, one of the big kind of reveal plays into the fact that the female the actress in the film that plays the female actress represents to Jimmy Stewart basically something in real.
Kim Novak. is the
Yes, Kim
actress,
Novak.
yes.
He represents something that doesn't exist.
Okay.
And because most directors tend to get into kind of grooves where they hire the same kinds of people, and that tends to apply to the opposite sex, where they hire people that they're attracted to. So all the females in his films tend to be really beautiful blonde women, and having her the way they have in the film is basically kind of him saying up front and admitting is just like, I don't do a good job portraying female characters in my movies. So they all just...
That's super interesting. Wow. I would have never thought of that.
Well, I wasn't the first one to come up with that.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of interesting film theory about that. So, but yeah, there's a lot to be said about what Vertigo is ultimately kind of means and what it's exploring through its medium, because it's one of the best films of all time, obviously.
Yes.
If not it, then at least one of Hitchcock's films deserves to be on all-time great lists. Just
Precisely, yeah. And we had a fun time of watching this on a really bad DVD player, so everything was just so dark and obtruse, and I had a hard time watching it. But I watched it a couple years ago on an actual good DVD player, and I remember really digging it. That's why this review's a little janky, because it was really hard to pay attention. That it was just...
Well, it's definitely
darkness.
it's a very dialogue-driven film. And you really have to kind of pay attention to what the characters are saying. And yeah, this is definitely not the best version of the film that I've come across. This is the very, very old, what year is this? The 1999 DVD release. So it hasn't aged gracefully as with technology. So
yeah, I mean, I'm sure the newer versions, probably on Blu-ray, look a lot better. But
sure.
Beware of this version of it. It does look cool. It's got the cool collector's edition, and that's how they get you. It's just oh, hey, buddy, you really like this movie? Well, it's a real old version. And
actually,
the special features are probably good. Let's see here.
Interesting thing about Vertigo, it's technically considered a lost film.
Really?
Yeah, because the original cut of Vertigo does not exist anymore. What happened was that after a lot of the original Hitchcock films played in theaters, they didn't play for a long time afterward, 20 or 30 years. So they didn't get re-released till the 80s. And by then, a lot of the film negatives were damaged. So, yeah, they degraded. So they had to do at least two separate restorations of the film just in order to get it to Blu-ray quality.
That stinks.
So one in the 80s when they re-released it, and a lot of the other films.
And probably that one.
Well, obviously Vertigo.
Yeah.
I forget what the other one was, but they released a few of them. And then, yeah, it's considered a lost film of sorts. So
yeah, there's that certain type of film they used to use, and it would actually catch on fire too. So a lot of those film production places, that's why a lot of films went missing, because accidents.
Oh,
and stuff
sure, we
that.
lost so many films to film fires.
It's ridiculous how flammable that stuff was. I watched some documentary. I think I sent it to you, and it was these people they could emulate it, but it's still just as dangerous. And the guy showed just hey, this is how bad it is. And he said, and when it catches on fire, it puffs out. So it's puffing out on. Just imagine a whole room, a whole vault full of film reels.
And they wouldn't go into those rooms for years on end. So they could have a fire, and you wouldn't find out about it for years.
Right. Yeah. Well, the film vaults, are they bank vaults? Exactly?
They have their temperature controlled vaults that control atmosphere and stuff like that, so that the films stay at a constant temperature, because its film stock is sensitive, so you have to protect it.
But it's got that awesome grainy quality that you cannot emulate. It's just something about that faded look, and it's so nice looking. That's why I like a lot of those old 60s, 70s movies.
Well, a lot of those are just watching random reels they've found.
Right.
Sometimes they'll just find a random reel of a classic film in some backlot of a storage unit somewhere.
Or a garage sale. It's ridiculous. I'm trying to think, one of those awesome bad movies that was on Mystery Science Theater 3000, 2 years ago, some guy found a really good, OG film reel of Manos, The Hands of Fate. That's why I got the HD remaster, which is... I don't know, why would you want to? That's a hard one to watch, but
oh man!
Apparently the Blu-ray it's got the HD master, but it also has the Mystery Science Theater 3000 episode too.
That's pretty cool.
So yeah, I definitely want to check that out. I think it came out. I hope it did. I don't know.
But yeah, regarding Vertigo, what were your thoughts? Like, do you have a history with Hitchcock, like watching his films at all, or?
When I was a little kid, this sounds morbid, but my parents showed me The Birds, and I really liked it. And you know what? I haven't watched it in probably like a decade. Like, I got to rewatch that. But then I watched Psycho probably in high school, and I watched it multiple times. And then there's a video store by me, R.I.P. It closed down, and I picked it up on VHS. And also Mystery Science Theater 3. We're going to talk about the show like a lot. But
yeah, because it's fresh on our minds.
Yeah, exactly. And I also picked up their movie on VHS, which they're watching This Island Earth. And just like it's basically an episode, but
sure,
with better cameras, and it's just really weird.
So yeah, Vertigo, excellent film.
Yes, highly recommend it. Highly recommendable. All right, that film's down. Are we going to talk about?
No, we still got a few more minutes.
Oh, okay. Put that right back. Oh man, this is going to be so derailed. Anyway, so the video store. I also picked up some other flicks. I picked up some South Park episodes on VHS tape, which is cool. Although I was rewatching the one, it was with Mecha Streisand and Robert Smith from The Cure, one of my favorite bands. He was in it, and of course, the videotape I got was so degraded. As soon as the scenes started coming in, it started glitching out and static. I'm like, it looked cool, but I'm like, man, like this stinks.
Well, it's the same DVD player that turned Vertigo into like a gray and blue mess. So.
No, I'm talking about VHS tape. That was just that was like a $20 DVD player, yeah. And then, that was one other videotapes I grabbed. Jackass the movie on VHS, just because. And there was something else. Oh, some weird late 90s computer art film called Televoid. And,
all right.
Yeah.
Thank you for that wonderful digression, Steve.
Yeah.
We'll be back in a moment with our segment on Fate of the Furious. Stay tuned.
Does this help at all?
Anything helps, ma'am. Just try to get some sleep now.
I can't sleep.
Yeah, me neither. I'm on my way.
Welcome back to the show. We just finished talking about the Vertigo, or Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo, in the last segment. Yes, exactly. One of the most interesting things about going back and watching those films is understanding just what the context of what that kind of movie is relative to the time then and to the time now. Often Alfred Hitchcock movies weren't considered top-tier films, as much of films like noir and westerns weren't at the time, but now they're considered classics that we all respect and we love, especially when we look back. And it raises an interesting question about the kind of films that come out 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or right now. What kind of films that come out today are going to be considered classics or utterly forgotten? Have we reached a point in our film history when most films are just not going to be good and they're going to be considered bad 20 years from now, and we all look back to the 80s as the masterpieces and the 70s? And that leaves a interesting question for something like the Fast and the Furious franchise, which is generally considered to be not smart, as Steve is going to attest to.
Oh, jeez.
So I'm going to start with the most pretentious question in the world. Do you think the Fast and the Furious franchise movie is going to be well remembered in a couple decades?
You know what? Probably, because I watched, man, like when the first one came out, like 2000.
It's an old franchise.
Yeah, I watched it when I was a little kid, and it's kind of memorable. And I think I saw one of them in the theaters maybe I don't know, I just remember Ludacris was in it, but I have a feeling it's going to be a nostalgic factor, and it's just going to be, I think it's going to be reminiscent of like a lot of those cheesy Schwarzenegger, Sly Stallone action movies. Like, they're not great films, they're popcorn munchers.
That's an interesting comparison to make, because it's like these are going to be like the modern equivalent of Commando or Death Wish 2.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, it's just like they're kind of exploitation, flicks when you think about it. They're car exploitation.
Yeah.
And then
lots of beautiful women, lots of good cars.
That's pretty cool. And then now like the cast is all like jacked, and like we got The Rock in there, which that's pretty cool. You took me to see this film at the wonderful Hollywood Boulevard, which that place was cool. Thanks, man. That was I'd never been there before. Broke my cherry going there, so that was cool. I
would have chosen more graceful words for that.
I was rocking that N64 hoodie, and everyone loved it.
Nice guys.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
they signed up my birthday thing real fast. I literally gave it to them, and I thought, because I write in Chicken Scratch, and I gave it to them, and then we're walking out, and then I got like a notification on my cell phone. It was just like, it was an email from there, just like, yeah, you could see a movie for free on your birthday. It's just like, cool. I hope it's another Fast and the Furious movie. I really enjoyed it, and I want to see more of them.
Real? Are you serious?
Sure.
I took a lot of kind of coercion to get you to go see that movie, and basically the coercion was you get to do the Vertigo episode. So, and it took a lot of arm twisting, but you did it, and so I'm kind of surprised that you enjoyed it.
No, I was being very tongue in cheek.
It went right over my head.
Yeah. Now look at this. Why is this little guy smaller than a
because it's a
Vertigo?
Blu-ray.
Oh.
And that one's from the
It's
library.
got two of them. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, DVD. All right, let's see here.
But yeah, the Fast and the Furious franchise.
Can't believe you own these. What is wrong with you?
They are
You
not
know what? I found some drink holders, so I could put my water on here.
very graceful.
Or some frisbee. I'm surprised like when you watch like one of these movies, like you didn't pull out of the DVD player or Blu-ray and just crack it. I always wanted to do that with some movie I hated. Just like within the first like 5 seconds or 5 minutes, just turn it off. Just flip off the screen and then break the disc.
I'm not so brave. But yeah, these are not smart movies.
No.
But
I'm not a car guy either. I used to be. Like when
Neither
I watched the first one, like I was super like my favorite car was like I don't know, like I love GTOs and Impalas and all that stuff, but like. Yeah, man. I don't know. It's crazy how stuff changes. Like, I used to love cars. And, like, you know what? A couple of the cars in there, they're kind of cool. I always like the big, old-fashioned boat cars. And these are all like, well, there's one or two old-school ones or whatever. But, yeah, it's mostly sports cars. And, I don't know, it's not really my thing.
It isn't for me either. And for my I pretty much ignored the franchise for the longest time because I didn't care about cars.
Correct.
And for the first like 4 of them, they're kind of just not good movies. Like, the first one is like a B movie, basically. Then there's like 3 really not interesting sequels. But by the time you get to like the 5, 6, and 7 area, they kind of get to this weird point where they have good directors, and the directors know that they're making schlock, so they just kind of pour in as much nonsense and fun. And they actually put the work into the script, so they're not badly written movies. And
I don't know about that.
They're slick. They don't have huge storytelling problems.
Like all right, so with this new one, was the blonde woman? She was like the evil
Charlize
the villain.
Theron.
Was she in the sequels at all?
She was not in any of these.
Okay, it made it seem like she was like a running character or something.
No.
Was there any, besides the main crew, was there any other crossover people or?
Well, the main crew's kind of been hanging out all together since the 6th movie. Because the
Come
first.
on, fast fanboy, tell me.
No, and I saw all these movies like once. But yeah, the first 5 they're kind of non-connected car movies.
Okay.
And the 6th decides it's like we're gonna bring all the characters back just for this big like anti-terrorism adventure because car thieves are really good at fighting terrorists for some reason.
Apparently so. And then what's the deal with the names? Like one of them is just called Fast and Furious.
The naming convention falls apart immediately in the series.
Yeah, because the first one is just Fast and Furious. Understand? The second one,
Too Fast, Too Furious.
With the number 2, and then
Tokyo Drift
that has nothing to do
Fast
with
and Furious.
That's the one.
Then Furious 5. Then Fast 5. first Fast and Furious 6, and then Furious 7, and then Fate of the Furious. But yeah, the last,
man,
it's a mess.
That is bad. Just like, I remember Angry Video Game Nerd brought it up, the Rambo movies. The first one is not called Rambo, it's called First Blood.
Yeah.
Then the sequel is called First Blood Part 2. And then it's Rambo 3. It's like, wait, what?
Yeah.
And
well,
then
it just
the
became
new
known as
one-
Rambo at that point.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. And then with the Rocky movies, like they were all good up until the new one. Now it's just called Rocky Balboa. It's just like, what? And then now there's Creed, which
It's not that bad.
yeah, no, it looked good. I still gotta check it, but it's
Well, I mean, it's the
technically
name-
is a spin-off.
Yes.
Correct?
It's
Okay.
Apollo Creed's son.
Oh, okay, and he's training him or something. Yeah, I
Yeah.
gotta check that out. I don't know. I watched Rocky Balboa, like the recent one, kind of boring. Not gonna lie. Like,
Okay.
yeah, I don't know, man. Like even the first Rocky, like there were some cool scenes, but very slow.
All right.
We're derailing so hard.
Yes. I was.
I
Gonna,
do not want to talk about this. Please
I
let
can
me
tell.
go.
I have.
Please
I had a couple of interesting things to say about
All right, here we go.
Fate of the Furious.
Yeah.
Just the reason I kind of like the newer ones, they're
fast paced.
They're fast paced.
Pun intended.
Yes, they understand what they are and they play it off as a joke. Like
Right.
they're basically just you could kind of get the sense that these directors are just laughing off stage. It's just
Yeah.
like they're just putting the most insane crap in, like in 7, where
Like in
they
the
drop
beginning.
cars out of an airplane
Yeah.
and they had one car jump from skyscrapers and it's
Yeah.
just they're just pouring as much crap in as possible to be funny.
I was
and
gonna say the beginning. Remember, like they're in Cuba or something.
yeah, they're hanging out in Havana.
And of course, like some guy, like Vin Diesel's relative, cousin, whatever, owes this guy money, so he's getting it towed. And then he's just like, yo, I'll raise you for it. And not only his car is like a junker, but he beats him. And instead of getting his car, his cousin's car back, he gives the one dude the keys and tells his cousin, you gotta buck off or something. It's like, oh my God, like.
This movie is not as good as the other ones, and which is this is probably a bad one for you to see as like the first one. So.
Yeah. Well, I like I said, I saw like the first 2 maybe back in the day, but
My big problem with this movie is that there's from like a writing level, there's no consequences to any of the actions of these characters.
No.
Like the whole plot is
Vin Diesel went bad for a minute, and then they all forgave him.
Well,
yeah.
I guess the idea is it's a decent idea for a movie. Guy's past comes up, he gets kind of dragged into the situation where he has to he's not doing things because he wants to. He's doing it because
he has a kid.
He's being guilted.
yeah.
He's being guilted to do the right thing for essentially the right reason. But it's basically a movie about your past catching up to you. That's basically what the movie is supposed to be about.
Was that past in any of the sequels?
It was the first movie where it's shown the character as a car thief, and he steals things for a living.
Vin Diesel.
So it's implied that Charlize Theron Vin Diesel is the car thief.
Okay.
So it's implied that Charlize Theron was someone he knew before
Back
the
in
first
the day.
movie.
Okay.
Yeah. So at least, yeah. So the lore goes so deep, it's so stupid. But what makes it not work is that
He had a kid out of nowhere.
well, not even just
Like, where did that come from? They came from like left field. It was like, yeah,
I guess-
you had a baby you forgot about.
I guess one of his later love interests or something. But the problem is that he doesn't end up paying any of the consequences for the bad things he does.
No.
He joins up with a cyber terrorist, essentially
Nonchalant, yeah.
he kills an international diplomat.
Yeah.
And then basically by the end of the movie, everyone, including the terrorists from the first movie, the last movie, are friends now. So Jason Statham.
Yes.
He was a
bad
terrorist from
guy,
the last
okay.
from 7.
Okay.
And he was probably the only good bad guy in the series, but
He's cool. Isn't he? What other films is he in? Hitman
Crank,
or something?
Transporter, stuff like that.
Yeah, never mind.
But yeah, he's like the only good bad guy in the series, and none of the characters end up having any sort of meaningful consequences for their actions. So, if this movie had ended with his death, I think it would have been bad. It's like if he'd sacrificed himself for the greater good. I think that would have been like the appropriate ending for it.
Yeah, the
but-
fate of the Furious. There you go.
Exactly. So, but unfortunately, that's not the ending we got, and it's a movie that it's visceral to watch, and I don't think you hated it as much as you kind of.
No, it was a popcorn muncher, and like there were scenes I laughed, like especially that whole baby thing. But
Yeah.
do not recommend.
Yeah, best action scene in the movie was just Vin Diesel punching people. Or not Vin Diesel. It was
The Rock.
Jason Statham.
Or The Rock too.
It was whatever.
He was doing some good. He was doing some good wrestling moves. So that was cool.
Sure.
Especially the jailhouse fight.
That was our review for Fate of the Furious. Come back for Steve's movie recommendation for the week. Stay tuned.
Good coffee, huh? Oh my god! What are you doing in my apartment?
Hello and welcome to our final segment. Now Steve will offer us his movie recommendation for the week.
Now, as you know, I've been talking to you a lot about this. I've been divulging again into David Lynch. And so
Yes.
my movie recommendation is Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. Now, it's kind of a prequel to the TV show, and the TV show is, to me at least, it's hit or miss. It's kind of like a tribute, parody of like 60s, 70s melodramas meets like a murder mystery type of thing. And the thing I loved about it was the music. The score is beautiful. It's like ambient music meets jazz meets dream pop, and it's just all done together. The filming is great, but some episodes some episodes are really good, and then some other episodes like, man, this is a sleeping pill. But I highly recommend the movie. Should you watch it without watching the TV series? Yes and no, because it is a prequel. But it does give away certain plot elements to the show that makes it awesome. So you probably should watch it after you watch the show, but it's like 30 episodes, and now it's coming back in 10 days, so that's gonna be cool. And then another movie, I don't know if I would recommend it, Lost Highway by David Lynch. Ugh, man, it's just, like, with his stuff, you know what you're getting into. It's just like, plot is gonna be incoherent. You're gonna see some really weird stuff, and just for some reason, like they change actors during the middle of the film, and it's supposed to be the same person. The story I still don't get. I watched it once, and it makes no sense. And then the soundtrack to that's really weird. It was mainly the late '90s, so it's super like I have to say it's like his mall goth movie. Tons of Rammstein. Marilyn Manson, he does a cameo in there for some reason. Also Henry Rollins and Richard Pryor, his last movie role, he was in there. He's in there for a whole like 5 seconds, but it was cool to see him. It was just like, wow, you're in a David Lynch movie. But also the soundtrack, the soundtrack's pretty whack, but they had this really awesome, one of the best Smashing Pumpkins songs, a couple cool Bowie songs, a couple cool Nine Inch Nails songs, and then Lou Reed doing some 1950s doo-wop cover. Can't think of it, but he does a very good take on it. But I don't know if I recommend that one. It's kind of out there and it gets boring and stuff, but there are a couple cool scenes, especially the cameraman guy. I don't want to give too much away, but
You talk about Twin Peaks enough that I'm pretty sure you actually like it. So
yeah, it's one of those things because my friends, they're all like, oh, you should watch it and stuff, and I kind of refused, and I kind of like it.
All right, thank you for that recommendation. I still haven't watched Twin Peaks yet, so I can't confirm, but it's the way he talks about it, it must be great. That's all for this episode of the Fox Valley Film Critics. You can follow me on Twitter at AndySocialCritic. You can find past recordings of the show at our Groupthink Productions YouTube page. I'm Tyler with the Fox Valley Film Critics. Have a good day.